It's now time for part two of our three-part special series, America the Beautiful. And our focus, exporting jobs out of America. Ford and Carrier Air Conditioning lately taking heat for announcing some manufacturing will be moving to Mexico. Candidates from both parties using these moves to slam some companies and call for more jobs to stay in America. Sounds easy, but is it really that simple? Let's bring in Bryan Riley, Senior Policy Analyst in Trade Policy at the Heritage Foundation, and Thea Lee, Deputy Chief of Staff at the AFL-CIO, who hopefully will join us in just a few minutes. Bryan, I understand free trade is good, right? And at this point, the horse has by far left the barn. But at some point, do we acknowledge that free trade is really never truly free?
Well, trade and investment brings both winners and losers. And look, I get it. When people hear Ford or Carrier are moving to Mexico, we think, oh, man, we can't build anything in the United States anymore. But the fact of the matter is, when it comes to manufacturing, much more money comes into the United States from abroad than goes from the U.S. to other countries. So, for example, for about every dollar that American companies spent in other countries in manufacturing, we got about, $1.80 from companies like BMW, Toyota, Honda that want to employ U.S. workers, and actually they employ over 2 million U.S. workers. So we can do just fine here in the United States.
Well, why can they do it? Why can they build the X5 in Spartanburg, South Carolina, and Mercedes can build in Alabama, and Hyundai can build in Alabama, and yet Ford needs to build in Mexico? That's what I don't get, Bryan.
Well, one of the advantages that Mexico has that we don't have in the United States is Mexico has about twice as many free trade agreements. So they can bring in the parts tariff-free, and they can sell the finished products tariff-free, particularly to the European Union. So if we want to sell a car made in the U.S. to the EU, it's got a 10% tariff. You build that same car in Mexico, it's got a 0% tariff. So I think that's a big reason why we need to have more free trade and more free trade agreements in the U.S., not fewer free trade agreements.
Do you buy that logic, that if we had even more free trade agreements, it would actually be more beneficial for American jobs?
No, I don't. I don't think that's the solution at all. The trade agreements are part of what is rewarding and encouraging outsourcing. As you mentioned, there are a lot of companies coming to the United States. One of the biggest advantages the United States has is our big consumer base. That's what makes us a good place to invest. But in order to be a good consumer base, we need to treat our workers well. We need to pay them well. And we're not going to compete with Mexico on low wages. So we need to compete by investing in America in infrastructure and skills. We need to reward companies that make good jobs here in the United States with our government purchasing policies and our tax policies. And we need to stop signing trade deals that are encouraging companies to move jobs offshore to take advantage of low wages and workers who don't have the rights to organize or to be treated fairly.
Wouldn't all those products become much more expensive? And in fact, maybe they couldn't even be purchased by the very workers that you're
Not at all. Not at all. I mean, there are different ways of competing, and I think a very short-sighted way for the United States would be to try to compete by getting our wages lower and lower and lower, and by violating environmental and consumer protections. We are a wealthy country. We're going to compete by having strong, well-educated, highly skilled workers and the best technology and a proximity to the consumer market. So trying to compete by undercutting wages is short-sighted.
And I agree with most of that statement, but I'd point out that U.S. manufacturing output has never been higher, and we're not going to be competitive by putting tariffs on things like steel that U.S. car makers need, that U.S. construction workers need. We need to be cutting tariffs on inputs that are used by U.S. manufacturers, not throwing up new barriers. There's a reason that Americans are the most competitive workers in the world, and that U.S. manufacturing output has never been higher. We need to work to reduce government barriers, not have more minimum wage barriers to entry, not have more deficit spending. Okay. That's exactly the wrong approach.
I think Thea and Bryan, I think we all agreed that America's great, American workers are great. Other than that, not sure. Thea and Bryan, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.